I am Linkages Chaudhary, and I will be host for this session. However, we have been organizing this summit in Delhi for the past 11 years, but due to this COVID outbreak, unfortunately, we have to do it on a web platform. But I'm really happy to see the patronage and all your support. With these few words, I would like to welcome Mr. Brij Bhushan Agarwal, Chairman ICC National Expert Committee on Minerals and Metals, Mr. Parthasarathi Bhattacharya, former CMD Coal India Limited, Mr. Vivek Bhatia, MD Thyssen Group, Mr. A.K. Singh, Executive Director RINL, and Mr. A.K. Shukla, CMD of Hindustan Copper Limited. Mr. M.C. Thomas, Chairman of the ICC Odisha State Council. I would also like to welcome all the participants to this session for being with us this morning. And now I would request Mr. Brij Bhushan Agarwal, Chairman ICC National Expert Committee on Minerals and Metals, to kindly deliver the welcome remarks. Over to you, sir.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, sir. Good to have you.
And I'm so delighted to see Parthoda after so long. Namaskar. Personally, you had been always a great inspiration and a great contribution to the Indian coal industry. Mr. Shukla ji, Bhatia ji, Mr. A.K. Singh, Mr. Thomas, everybody, very, very good morning, and I welcome everyone in this webinar platform of 12th Indian Coal Summit. As we all know that Indian ambitious renewable energy goal, and today how important coal is there for the power sector, and not only for the power sector, coal is very important in our day-to-day life because there are so many perishable, non-perishable thing which is dependent on the carbon. So I personally feel coal is such an important sector and so much related to the population, the GDP, that it cannot be ignored, and we have to all give our serious attention and concern on the development of the coal in our country on day-to-day concerns. The Indian coal industry is witnessing a renewed surge in demand of 7% in 18-19, and then also we saw there was a huge import of coal, which is a very clear example that yes, domestic production has to go up to reduce the import and to control the inflation of coal, as well as to see how best we can utilize our natural resources within the country. The coal industry is also facing a very, very structural and financial challenges. As we know, the total control of the coal is within the hand of Coal India Limited. And today, with the government policies of auctioning, inviting the private and the international sector in the mining business is going to create a huge structural and financial challenges. Structural challenges, likewise, we will see there's a lot of improvement in the quality and the competition, a good pricing, so that it will be beneficial to the energy sector and also will help Coal India to be more competitive when they see a near competition coming up in the near time. There is also, we should not forget, a lot of challenges of starting a mining business in our country because the land concerns, the environmental challenges, and so many other heritage challenges are inheriting in our system that we really need to focus very seriously with the government in explaining our concerns and taking out the solution, because I personally believe rather than only talking about the concerns or the problem, we should also work on the solution side by. Today, more than 55% of our energy generation is dependent on the coal in the country. And we see the generating industry is also facing a huge challenges. There is demand is lesser than the generation. And with the private player coming up in the generation with a very higher efficiency plant rate and modality of operation, there is huge pressure on the power generation industry. As we see down the line, more than 50 gigawatt of generating power is surplus. So first of all, we really need to see that we should be able to cater the demand of coal to import our pressure on the foreign exchange, and also see how to control the cost of the power. If we are not able to cater this 50 megawatt of upcoming new generation and we have to import the coal, then from the cost as well as forex, it's not going to have a very great effect on our economy. India also plans a lot of other mining activity apart from coal, the gases, the CBM and all. So which also needs a very clear attention from the government end with a right static policy so that it can help both coal and related mining to the coal grow simultaneously. The Indian mining industry comprising of entire coal and non-coal mineral mining segment are going through challenges, as we know, for the COVID. While the government attempts to combat and contain this through a lockdown to ensure mandatory social distancing is commendable. In the memo task of minimizing the impact of pandemic, the coronavirus break, the electricity demand in the short term could have been a bearing on the national coal consumption, as more than half of the India installed capacity, as we know, is coal-fired. Our state-owned 54 coal mining projects are also facing a huge delay on the various reasons, which really needs a special attention by the government by forming a committee to eliminate and create a strong target for these state subsidiaries and their seriousness to overcome the issues. This is very important, whether it is IC, whether it is environmental issues or the forest land issues or the water clearance issues, whatever. But we really need to push this very strongly. And this is a very standard concern across all the states. And I believe a committee at the government end to control, to see how can we eliminate this concern, should be taken very seriously through a special form committee. With these few words, I leave it on the expert on this sector to take up this forward. I am also sure the deliberation of this summit will definitely help us to make matters more conclusive. Thank you everyone for being the part of this important summit today. And lastly, I would say, be safe, be progressive. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your remarks. It's always a pleasure to listen to you. And now I would request Mr. Parthasarathi Bhattacharya, former CMD Coal India Limited, to kindly address us. Partha sir has to leave in a while because he has got another meeting. So we would request him to present. Thank you, sir. Can you please unmute, sir? Mr. Bhattacharya, can you please unmute?
I'm audible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Perfect.
So first of all, thank you, Indian Chamber of Commerce, on two counts. A, of course, for inviting me to this conference, and B, to be so brave as to organize a two-day coal conference in the current scenario. I find that most of the energy conferences these days have fast-forwarded to 2050, to a world where there is no coal, everything is clean and green, everything is renewables. So in that kind of a situation, to have this seminar and to bring coal back into the energy narrative requires certain amount of courage. And I must compliment your chairman and the Indian Chamber of Commerce for displaying that courage. Now, the fact remains that coal globally is actually on the way out. There is no doubt about that. If you have gone through the BP latest report, which was launched on the 14th of September, in all the scenarios that were explained, coal is largely on the way out, and it is seen to be on the way out in some parts of the world, at least, if not all. Excepting that India and China stand out as exceptions. Now, these two countries, even between India and China, there is a lot of difference, because the two countries started on somewhat the similar level in the early 60s. And China, by creating huge capacity for coal production, multiple players, large number of players, has actually moved from that kind of a level to close to 4 billion tons now in terms of production and consumption. The largest Chinese company having a share of not more than 10% in the total production. India, unfortunately, depended on only one large player, and that is Coal India, with a share of more than 80% in the total coal production. The capacity addition in the coal sector has not really kept pace with the growth of demand. And as a result, we are below 1 billion ton today in terms of production and consumption. Production is actually around 750 million tons, and demand is close to, and consumption is close to 950 or 975. The balance is imported. So that is the kind of situation we are in. China, by following a low-cost coal-based development strategy for 5 decades, have actually converted itself into a highly cost-competitive superpower. Unfortunately, we have, to some extent, missed the bus. Commercial mining, which should have come not less than 15 to 20 years earlier, is now coming. I think it is a little late, but still, we always can hope for a better situation going forward. The cost of renewable power has come down quite drastically. Even the cost of storage is on the way to reduction, further reduction. As a result, it has been knocking at the doors of coal-based power capacity. And today we have already reached a situation where creation of additional incremental power generation capacity is unlikely to be coal-based, because the cost of that is likely to be more than the current renewable power cost. So further growth in coal-based capacity, power generation capacity, is to some extent unlikely, excepting for those in the pipeline. They will come, but fresh capacities are unlikely to be added. However, where the growth in coal demand could come in the medium term, or maybe to some extent in the little longer term, is from the existing capacities. Now, existing power generation capacity, as we all know, has been operating at a very low PLF. The capacity utilization is somewhere around 55%, 50 to 55% levels. At that level of capacity utilization, the cost of generation is high, and the power plants are unable to actually meet the debt service burden. I mean, it's a challenge to meet the debt service burden. And we are into a sort of a distress kind of a situation. So any rise in power generation by improvement in PLF is likely to be least costly, because it will incur only the marginal cost of coal, and it will make the power stations to that extent more viable. Now, where will it come from? The issue is the main culprit in the whole process, in the whole electricity coal ecosystem. The major problem is with the DISCOMs. Now, the DISCOMs don't have the capacity to buy and sell power, and that's the reason we see an artificial demand supply kind of a gap. You see, I mean, demand is less than supply. That is kind of a situation, which is very unlikely because in the ultimate analysis, what you see is the per capita consumption of electricity, which in India is just about a third of China or a third of our global average. And if India has to develop, it cannot remain at that level. So therefore, at this 1100 units per head per person is not the level to contend with. We have to double it up as quickly as possible. And when we see the need for the doubling up, the immediate area from where more power can be generated is by the existing thermal power units working more effectively, more efficiently at a higher level of capacity utilization. Now, the DISCOMs, we are talking about the DISCOM reforms. We are talking about 90,000 crores of infusion. Now the figure is going up as we spend time. People are feeling that more money is required to really transform the DISCOMs. But all these supports are one time, so they can help for some time, and then again the problem will start. So we have to be able to find out a recurring solution to the problem of DISCOMs cash shortage. Once that problem is tackled, then the DISCOM's main role of buying more power and selling more power will come into play. And as that happens, the PLF is bound to rise. So we see in the near term, if DISCOM reforms proceed as anticipated, we see in the near term, or rather in a 3 to 5 year kind of a scenario, the current level of PLFs of 50-55% going up to at least 70 to 75%. So this 15 to 20% rise in PLF will mean an additional coal demand of 150 to 200 million tons. That is for sure, because it's about 10 million tons for 1% improvement in the PLF. As we all know that more than 220 to 230 million tons of coal is imported every year, out of which at least 100 million tons is imported by non-coastal consumers in the main heartland. And that import can be always substituted by domestic production. So that 100 million ton is the extra demand that has to be met by increasing domestic production. So there are two components I've already explained. One is about 150 to 200 million tons of incremental coal demand arising from rising PLF pursuant to improvement in DISCOM's financial performance. Second is the import substitution of 100 million tons. There is a third component. There is a huge lot of stranded capacity, coal-based, which are not functional today because of various problems, bank loans not being paid, ownership disputes, or etc., etc. Quite a bit of that we expect to be sorted out over a period of time. There is the NCLT process which is in place. There are instances where NTPC is buying out some of those power stations. So those power stations, those stranded capacities can get operationalized over a period of time. So even if 50% of that, not 40 gigawatts, 50% of that, that's about 20 gigawatts, come into operation, let us say over the next 4 or 5 years, then that would mean another 100 million tons of coal demand. So in all, we are staring at a short-term demand growth of 300 to 350 or 350 to 400 million tons from the existing operations, from the imbalances in the whole process. And this is all the demand growth that is possible for coal. I don't think further addition to coal-based capacity is likely. So therefore, what we are anticipating is from the current level of somewhere around 725 million tons of coal production, the coal production can go up to 1150 to 1200 million tons, stagnate at that level for some time, and till maybe 2040, 2045. And then with the advent of renewables and the cleaner and greener energy coming into the system faster, a gradual decline is likely to take place. That is as far as the current situation is concerned. There is one more area which can create coal demand, which has very successfully happened in China. Use of coal as feedstock. Use of coal as particularly feedstock for oil and fuel is unlikely, but chemicals very likely. Fertilizer quite likely. Fertilizer is one area where India is import dependent. We depend for import of ammonia, even to an extent urea, and a lot of complex fertilizers are imported, which could be produced if there is availability of gas or coal. So since gas availability in India is not there to that extent, we have not been able to do much in that. I think coal can be used as a feedstock for producing urea and ammonia, and that ammonia can be used to produce complex fertilizers. Some efforts are already going on in that direction, but much more can be done. So that could be another area which can create a demand of 150 million tons of coal demand over a longer term, because this is a long-term phenomenon. There is a project which Coal India has undertaken to produce methanol out of coal at Dankuni, and we have to see, how that shapes up. I don't want to make any early comment on the possible success or failure of that project, because Dankuni Coal Complex has not really delivered so far. But that is one project that has been undertaken. So this is broadly the kind of scenario that is likely to evolve in future. So coal is here to stay. In 2020, we should not believe that we are already in 2050 and throw coal out of the window. That's not the right thing to happen. Coal must be in the energy narrative. As the chairman has rightly said, coal constitutes about 50-55% of the total energy basket. About 75% of power generation is from coal. So taking coal out of the narrative is counterproductive. We should talk about clean coal. We should talk about how to wash coal, how to make use of coal cleaner, how to reduce the emissions part out of coal, how to use better technology for power generation, how to go for underground mining of coal, which is definitely more environment friendly than open cast mining. So these are the issues which should be very much a part of the central debate as we move on for the next 25, 30 years when we'll have to live with coal. So I think with that, let me conclude. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Hello. Yeah, thank you so much, sir, for your speech. Such an assertive remarks which you have made. It's really been quite hopeful for the coal industry as such. And now I would request Mr. Vivek Bhatia, Managing Director, Thyssen Group, kindly address.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. And at the outset, I would like to congratulate ICC. I think it is. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, you're audible. Please
Okay.
carry on.
So I would like to congratulate ICC for organizing this coal summit. And I think the backdrop and timing for this conference is really, it's really a very interesting time to have this discussion because we are in the midst of a significant change in our approach from a regulations and policy perspective in India. We are all aware that there has been a significant opening up announced by the government, and the auction process is actually underway. So I think this is a perfect time to reflect on where coal stands and also to think about the midterm and longer term outlook for Indian coal. I would also like to congratulate Mr. Agarwal and Mr. Bhattacharya. I think they have really brought out all the key aspects that are extremely relevant when we think about the midterm and long-term perspective of coal in Indian economy. I think they've really captured very nicely all the key points. Certainly, India depends a lot on coal. We have 50% of our power generation capacity, which is more than 50%, which is based on coal. And from a generation perspective, it is even higher, as Mr. Bhattacharya explained. From a production perspective, we are at around 725 million tons. And I also agree with the perspective that, we are looking at a significant increase. If I add all the numbers, easily this will cross 1,200, probably be closer to 1,300 or 1,400, which means that over the next 10, 15 years, we are almost looking at a doubling of production, which means we will look at a growth rate in coal production of easily somewhere around 7%, 5 to 7%. In that range, we will continue to see a growth in coal production. A critical part of this is really the contradiction that we see in India today. We are a top 5 country in terms of coal reserves, but we are also one of the top importers of coal. And clearly around 230 million tons is what we are importing every year. And I think definitely this will be a focus for the government and also for the industry on how to develop local production to minimize the import of coal that we are bringing into the country. And certainly that will be one of the biggest drivers of growth in the sector. At the other side, I think there are significant concerns around coal production, not only in an Indian context, but from a global context. We are aware about the Paris Convention. We are aware about significant public initiatives and also NGO initiatives which are calling for a significant and faster substitution of coal. But if we look at it, the alternatives will take time to really step in. And I totally agree with the previous speakers that it will be at least another 15 to 20 years before the tide really turns. And in that context, from an industry point of view, we have to really reflect on how best we can work with coal to minimize the negative effects of coal from emissions by using technology. Now let's maybe reflect a bit on what will make this possible. So we know that from a volume perspective, we need to have a significant growth in coal production for a variety of reasons. But what are really some of the challenges that we need to address as we are working towards this goal? For a start, if we look at our cost of production, today if I compare FOB prices at various countries which are major producers of coal, and I compare the FOB price of coal in India, then what we see is that in India, our cost of production is almost 20 to 25% higher compared to cost of production in some of the other economies like Indonesia. Now, this is an extremely important aspect for us to realize, because when we think of coal, it has really a cascading effect on all the downstream industries. It has a cascading impact on power. It has a cascading impact on the cement and steel industries. And if the cost of production of coal is higher, then definitely all the downstream industries which are using coal also have a cost impact. So having cost competitive coal production is not just important for the coal industry, but it is actually important for the entire Indian economy to maintain competitiveness across all our sectors. This is, I think, point number one. Second, we have to see that during the course of the year, we have noticed that particularly during the monsoon period, there is a sharp decline in the production of coal. Almost 20 to 25% decline in the production of coal happens due to seasonal factors. Now, this is again an area where we need focus and attention, particularly when we are looking at, from an Indian perspective, such a strong growth in the production of coal in the years ahead. Thirdly, I think we have to be conscious not just about the greenhouse gas emissions by utilizing coal, but we have to be conscious about the environmental impact of the entire mining process itself. And clearly, getting a social license to mine will be an equally critical topic. We may auction the mines, we may provide the leasing rights, but when it comes to actually extracting coal, we have to be conscious of the environmental impact, and we have to make sure that we are doing it in a more sustainable and environmentally friendly way. Otherwise, coal mining companies will struggle to get the support of local indigenous populations who will be impacted by this. So that means new technologies such as large stream mining are some of the aspects which we must think about. So these are some of the challenges that we have to reflect on. What would be a solution towards overcoming some of these challenges? Clearly, we have to look at what is the best technology that is available worldwide. Now, over many years, Indian coal mining has really adopted technologies at a certain pace. I think with the introduction of the surface miners, we really took a step forward. We have added really high quality equipment. The technology at the mine phase has really continued to improve. But when I look at all of these challenges, and also when I look at examples worldwide, for example, Australia, China, and some of the other major locations like Indonesia, where mining has really progressed, then we clearly see there is still a lot of potential for us to bring in more technology into our mining processes. Some of these, for example, could be continuous mining, which we know it is capital intensive, but at the same time, from an operating cost perspective, it is very well understood that with continuous mining, it has been demonstrated that up to 25 to 30% reduction on an operating cost basis can be realized through the adoption of various continuous mining technologies. We have looked at various blast-free technologies, and still I would say the excavation of overburden relies a lot on blasting in India. But there are technologies now which can even help us avoid this blasting. And when we avoid blasting, immediately that has a cascading impact. Firstly, there is an immediate benefit on the social license to mine, but also moving towards blast-free removal of overburden and coal allows us to access a lot of stranded assets for coal, which are not able to be extracted today simply because they are so close to various areas where people are living. So technology has to be really brought into the picture for us to realize this significant increase in the volumes. And also technology is required for us to start mining in a much, much more competitive way. Lastly, I would say it is very important that we think on additional technologies which are also able to improve the quality of our coal. We have had a significant progression in building out coal washeries. And I think that part of the market also needs to continue to evolve significantly to improve the availability and utilization of Indian coal, going forward. Now, for that also, we also must consider associated technologies. So we have a lot of washery reject. So we have to think of various technologies which can help us manage these washery rejects. So, for example, a more extensive use of CFBC technology to utilize these washery rejects and also generate power, which is then feeding these operations. Lastly, I would like to make one additional remark. I think coal mining today is highly diesel dependent. And this is really quite a contradiction because on the one hand, we are looking towards improving the foreign exchange position by substituting imported coal. And on the other side, we are really driven by diesel-based equipment in the entire mining process. So I think it would be good for the industry to also look at electrification, which will, for a start, I think, improve the emissions profile of the mining process itself. And also, reduce the environmental impact at the mine site, and also allow us to use surplus power generation through the utilization of washery rejects, etc., into the entire mining process itself. So I think I'm overall bullish and confident that with the strong demand perspective that has been highlighted, and which is definitely the situation and is the need and requirement of the Indian economy, I am confident with the introduction and adoption of technologies, we should be able to do this in a much, much better way, in a more acceptable way, to really produce this coal in a highly competitive manner and really propel the Indian economy forward. So with those remarks, I would like to conclude and thank ICC team once again and congratulate them for this summit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bhatia, for being with us in this summit. This was really a very positive and an assertive speech. Thank you once again. And now I would request Mr. A.K. Singh, Executive Director, Vizag Steel, to make his remarks.
Good morning, respected distinguished panel of speakers, invited. In fact, Mr. Ray, I have a presentation to share. Could you enable the share?
Devabrata? Devabrata,
yes, I am making presentation, sir. Please, sir,
yeah, please share his presentation.
Yeah.
should I run, sir, or
Yeah, Devabrata, please run.
I'll present. Share file.
Mr. Singh, you would like to run the presentation or you want my colleague Devabrata to do it for you?
I'll do it. I'll do it. Is it visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
sir, make it full screen, sir? Yes.
Okay.
So you can start now. It's visible. And you are audible as well.
Okay. Once again, very good morning. Basically, I'll not be speaking on power sector coal requirements. We are a steel plant, and so my presentation will generally be limited to RINL and the coal usage at RINL. And I'll be limiting my presentation on coking coal aspects. So, Vizag Steel is a 7.3 million ton crude steel plant. It's a shore-based steel plant at Visakhapatnam. Vizag is a beautiful city blessed with mesmerizing coastal stretch and natural beauty in abundance. Just a small brief on our steel production, quick steel production, and gross coke production, and met coke production that we have been doing. As I said, I'll be mostly touching upon some of the aspects of my organization, which is relevant to coking coal and today's topic. Steel plant always relates to national steel policy, which was formulated in 2017. Present per capita steel consumption in the country stands at around 70 kg, including rural consumption of around 10 kg. It's much lower than the global average of 208 kg. As is generally understood in India, coal is the soul of Indian industry. Ministry of Steel is coordinating very actively with Ministry of Coal. Ministry of Coal and Ministry of Steel has been listening very actively together to increase the availability of coking coal through overseas asset acquisition and also listening with Coal India Limited so that sufficient number of modern coking coal washeries get established. Regarding acquisition of coal overseas assets, ICVL, Indian Coal Ventures Limited, is one such venture wherein RINL, SAIL and NMDC have taken up, and that mine is already functional. Steel Ministry and the steel industry has taken up a lot of initiatives to establish coal linkages with Russia also to put a check on oligopolistic coking coal market of Australia. In fact, last year, Steel Minister and we had also visited Russia, particularly in the far eastern region of Russia, wherein a lot of mining initiatives have been taken. And we are trying to source coking coal as well as PCI coal from Russia also. Coal Ministry and Steel Ministry are also seriously working together as to how to reduce coking coal imports. Plans are afoot. There were a lot of high-level meetings conducted in the Ministry of Coal along with the Ministry of Steel as to how fast we can establish or set up modern coal washeries by Coal India Limited, so as to improve the percentage in the coking coal that is made available in India. Presently, it is not healthy. The coking coal from Coal India Limited is available is not at all present. That needs to be brought down, say below 18%. And then coming to other aspects of Make in India initiative, creation of steel demand in the country is one of the major tasks to be undertaken in this direction. Steel Ministry has identified construction and manufacturing sectors like rural development, urban infrastructure, roads and highways, railway network, etc. to be the focus areas of steel consumption. Also areas like shipbuilding, automobiles, parts sectors, capital goods production, etc. are where steel consumption can be enhanced. With regard to the national steel policy of 2017, if India has to go up to the steel production of say 50 million tons, then the coking coal requirement in India would be around 150 million tons, and the coal for pulverized coal injection will be to the tune of 30 to 35 million tons per annum. Last year, India imported around 49 million tons of coking coal, 37 million tons from Australia, 8 million tons from US and Canada put together, and 2 million tons from Mozambique. Also sourcing from Indonesia and Russia has started. With expansion of steel industry in India, there has been a sharp rise in the import of metallurgical coal in India. Almost around 80 to 85% of our metallurgical coal requirement is being imported presently. So there needs to be a lot of focus on maximizing PCI in the blast furnaces, and the coke rate in the blast furnaces has to improve. Largely world over, a blast furnace is a major route of steel production. Mostly around 60 to 65% of hot metal is produced all over the world through blast furnace route. So this is one area where we need to focus more in order to improve efficiency, cost, as well as coal utilization in India. For a conservative estimate of 200 million tons of crude steel production by 2030, around 100 million tons of electrical coke is required to be imported, considering 300 to 350 million tons, 350 kg per ton of hot metal of coke rate in blast furnaces. So steel industry needs to build another 60 to 65 million tons per annum of coke production capacity by 2030-31. Not an easy task. A lot of investment is required. Also, a lot of land acquisition and environmental issues need to be addressed, as it requires for recovery type of coke. RINL does not have either coal captive mines or iron ore captive mines. It's quite distressing to note that nearly 65 to 68% of our total expenditure in the plant goes on raw material purchase. Since RINL doesn't have raw material security, it faces all the music, what with price volatility, what with effects of endogenous and exogenous sources and factors, and it makes functioning of a public sector like RINL very, very difficult. This is the coking coal receipts of RINL per annum. Roughly around 4 to 4.5 million tons of coking coal we have been consuming, out of which very small percentage of medium coking coal we use, which is sourced from Coal India Limited. This is the average cost of coal that we have been paying. Prices of coking coal in 16-17 third quarter went through the roof. It almost from September onwards, September 2016, it skyrocketed from $80 an FOB to almost more than $220 per ton FOB. This is the total expenditure on coking coal that we have been incurring per annum. The prices of imported hard coals that has been there on an average per annum. Prices of soft coking coal, prices of PCI coal, these are the freight charges that we bear per ton of coal. This is the production plan at RINL. Coke requirement continues to be high, and we have only 4 coke oven batteries. 5th coke oven battery is likely to be commissioned next month. The 4 coke oven batteries, these are the 7 meter tall coke oven batteries. These are by any standards the oldest coke oven batteries operating in India. They have completed more than 31 years of age and still running healthy. These are the plans with regard to coking coal requirement at RINL. So as I said, blast furnace is the major route of steel making, and as long as blast furnace route of steel making continues to be there, coke cannot be dispensed with, and coke making will again entail the high quality of coking coal, and so the coking coal quality remains a very important parameter, and that's the reason 80 to 85% of imported of coking coal is imported from abroad, because the indigenous coking coal available in India are not up to the mark with respect to the rheological properties that it shows or the ash content that is delivered by the mining companies. So as I said, prime quality coking coal is not available in India. The Indian coking coal largely have high ash flow coking properties and high organic as well as inorganic inerts. So at RINL, we have been mostly sourcing coal majorly from Australia, also from US, Canada, Indonesia, Mozambique. The ICVL also we have been taking, and of late we have been trying to source coal from Russia also. We have made some forays, and hopefully we'll be very soon start importing from Russia also. We have done certain research and developments with regard to coal blending because that plays a major role in cost saving. We have gone for straight coal. Earlier we were using, before 2009, we were using blended coal from abroad, but now we take on straight coal and do blending at our base. So finally, what I would like to summarize is if at all we have to be dependent on indigenous coal to a large extent, lot of trust on establishment of coal washeries have to be made, and that is where we are lacking very badly. Underground mining, as Bhattacharya was telling, underground mining has also to be focused more, and the shipping cost, the shipping cost, I mean the transportation cost of coal has also to be borne in mind. There has to be a lot of infrastructural development required with respect to road and rail linkages. Majorly rail linkages have to be improved to a greater extent, and also use of better technology in coal mining, coal washing, as well as in steel making. It's one area where we need to focus in order to realize the national steel policy that dream into a reality. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Singh, for such an informative remark. And now I will request our last speaker of the session, Mr. A.K. Shukla, CMD Hindustan Copper Limited, to address us. But before he addresses, I would request all our attendees, if you have any question, please put forward your question in the chat box so that after this speech we can take it up with each and every panel. Request all the attendees forward your questions in the chat box. Over to Mr. Shukla.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My previous speakers have elaborated very nicely on the scenario of Indian coal industry as well as the global demand and supply. I would like to focus on some of the issues related to demand and supply in mid to long term outlook for Indian coal sector. Coal has been the major source of energy for long. It is the backbone on which modern electricity generation rests. We understand this thing. World proved coal reserves were estimated to something 1,069 billion tons at the end of 2019. I took this figure from a report. USA has the largest coal reserves, that is about 34% share of the total world reserve, followed by Russia, 15%, Australia 14%, and China 13%. As for Global Energy Statistical Yearbook 2020, total energy consumption in 2019 was in the form of oil, 31%, gas 23%, electricity 10%, biomass 10%, and coal 26%. Coal currently supplies around 30% of the primary energy and around 41% of global electricity generation. Where China dominates world coal usage as per the recent data, it consumes around 51% of the coal worldwide, more than the rest of the world combined. Other major consumers of coal include India, that is 11%, US 9%, Japan 3%, and Russia 3%. In European countries, we are seeing that gradually they are going for other sources of energy, and coal mines are going to be closed in coming years, in 10 to 15 years. As per the IEA forecast, coal use would rise to over 50% by 2030, with developing countries being responsible for 97% of this increase, primarily to meet their futuristic electrification targets. Again, the International Energy Agency predicts that the future of energy growth will be led by non-OECD countries such as India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, South Asia, and China. Coal demand in Southeast Asia is forecast to grow by more than 5% per year to 2024, led by Indonesia and Vietnam. However, in 2019, an overall trend of decreasing consumption of coal has been observed. As per BP's statistical review of World Energy 2020, during 2019, global coal consumption declined by 0.6%, and its share in primary energy fell to its lowest level in 60 years. Increases in coal consumption were driven by the emerging economies, particularly China and Indonesia, 1.8 exajoule and 0.6 exajoule respectively. Cleaner fossil fuel alternatives are emerging. However, they still only account for 12% of energy generation. This was outweighed by a sharp fall in OECD demand, which fell to its lowest level in our data series. Global coal production rose by 1.5%, with China and Indonesia providing the only significant increase. The largest declines came from the US and Germany. Day before yesterday, I was watching TV, and there was a great protest in Germany, and they were opposing the country's policy of going for coal mining till 2038. The activists were saying that the deadline is too late to effectively tackle climate change. So this is going on worldwide, especially in the developed countries. Public and private climate policies, combined with the competition from cheaper gas-fired and renewable power generation, have accelerated the closure of many coal-fired power plants and resulted in dramatic cuts in coal consumption in the European Union. In US, where nearly 14 gigawatt of coal-fired power capacity was closed in 2019. Now, in our country, coal consumption declined by 3.4% due to higher hydropower and renewable generation that cut coal needs in the power sector. Coal consumption slowed down in Indonesia and decreased in South Korea and Japan due to a lower demand from the power sector. It also slowed down in large coal-producing countries such as Russia, they have switched to coal to gas in the power sector, and South Africa, they reduced operations at coal-fired power plants due to technical issues, and even contracted in Australia and Turkey. Now, coming to the Indian scenario, in 2019, India was the third largest producer as well as the third largest consumer of electricity. The energy sector in the South Asian country consumes about 70% of the domestic coal produced. Coal India Limited, the largest coal producing company in the world, had produced approximately 600 plus million metric tons of coal in 2019. As we know that in our country, 750 million ton coal was produced, and the demand is around 975 million ton. As per the draft National Energy Policy formulated by NITI Aayog, India Vision 2040 envisages demand-driven provision of energy at affordable prices, high per capita consumption of electricity, access to clean coking energy, and electricity with universal coverage, low emission, and security of supply as criteria that would characterize the energy parameters of India in 2040. The installed coal-based electricity generation capacity is expected to grow to 330 to 441 gigawatt by 2040. This is likely to translate into a coal demand of 1.1 to 1.4 billion tons. This was told by the previous speaker, Mr. Partha Bhattacharya, that we have to touch the 1 billion mark by 2025. The known levels of proven coal reserves of about 138 billion tons as of 31st March 2016, I am keeping this board figure with me, may only be able to support an annual peak production of 1.2 to 1.3 billion tons till 2037, with a gradual decrease thereafter. This fact calls for intensifying exploration to enhance the proven coal reserves. Country has to go for intensive exploration in coal mining belt, because at least country should know the reserves or how much reserves country is having. Though if the demand will decline also, this will be useful for the country. Power generation for renewables is forecast to expand strongly, with wind capacity doubling and solar photovoltaic projects to increase fourfold between 2018 and 2024. But that is not enough to prevent coal power generation from increasing by 4.6% per year to 2024. Coal has long been a reliable source of energy. However, with growing concern about climate change, cleaner fossil fuel alternatives are emerging as energy sources. Air pollution and global warming are two of the most serious impacts of coal burning. The same chemistry that enables coal to produce energy, that is breaking down of carbon molecules, produces carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and other harmful environmental impacts and pollutants that harm public health. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, there is substantial evidence that higher concentrations of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases have increased the mean temperature of Earth since 1950. This increase is probably the cause of noticeable reduction in snow cover and sea ice extent in the northern hemisphere. In addition, a worldwide increase in sea level and a decrease in mountain glacier extent have been documented. Technologies being considered to reduce carbon dioxide levels, including biological fixation, cryogenic recovery, disposal in the oceans and aquifers, and conversion to methanol. Coal India has been ranked 8th on the list of top 20 companies responsible for global carbon emissions from 1965 to 2017, according to a recent data set released by US-based Climate Accountability Institution. Cleaner fossil fuel alternatives are emerging. However, they still only account for 12% of energy generation. Since the 1970s, stricter laws have significantly reduced the environmental damage caused by coal mining in developed countries, though more severe damage continues to occur in many developing countries. The COVID-19 pandemic and the corresponding lockdown imposed have reduced electricity use and industrial production in most of the countries and have reduced global coal consumption considerably. It is observed that global coal demand fell by 8% in quarter first of 2020 related to Q1 of 2019. This significant drop was driven by lower demand in the electricity sector, where 2/3 of coal is consumed. Coal power generation fell by around 10% during the pandemic. Industrial use of coal also declined during the period, although a reported increase in coal use for steel production in China mitigated the decline. Falling of global coal demand by about 8% in 2020 is the largest drop since World War II, with coal use declining in virtually every sector of every region in the world. As predicted, coal demand in China is likely to decline in 2020 by around 5% despite the gradual recovery since the lockdown period as an after effect of the pandemic. Significant declines in coal demand in advanced economies predicted by IEA, like 25% in US, around 20% in European Union, and 5 to 10% in Korea and Japan. India has taken a major decision to fully open the coal and mining sectors for competition, capital, participation, and technology. Speaking on the occasion, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi said opening of coal mines for commercial mining will be bringing the coal sector out of decades of lockdown. As per the vision of the Prime Minister, the launch of the auction process not only marks the beginning of unlocking of the country's coal sector from the lockdown of decades, but aims at making India the largest exporter of coal. For decades, the country's coal sector was entangled in a web of captive and non-captive. It was excluded from competition. There was a big problem of transparency. The system has became transparent. Reforms done will have a positive impact on power, steel, fertilizer, aluminum, and cement sectors, which will benefit the eastern and central India, the regions rich in coal and minerals. Commercial coal block auction will be a win-win for industry users, and the government has opened up coal and mining sector to competition, capital, and technology. Employment generation for more than 2.8 lakh people has been envisaged. With this, the government has set an aim of gasification of 100 million tons of coal by 2030 with an investment of rupees 20,000 crore. A significant challenge for the country is to balance fast-growing electricity demand while simultaneously pursuing climate change aims at reducing their emission in line with the goals of the Paris Agreement. Recognition that coal is going to remain a major fuel source for power generation as fossil fuels, including coal, will still make up 75% of the global energy mix in 2040, according to recent projections. Countries are taking necessary steps to develop and promote utilization of low emissions technologies, including carbon capture, use and storage. Awareness is also increasing in the developing country. In India also, the clean coal is essential and thrust on underground mining is very important to go for the green energy. Coal India, the largest company in India producing coal, is going for new washeries, and my suggestion will be that modular washeries should be created in low cost at pit head, and as suggested by the earlier speaker, Mr. Bhattacharya, that use of coal as a feedstock is really important for producing fertilizer in the country. Thank you all for your attention. Stay safe and healthy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shukla, for such a good speech. And now we'll take a few questions from the attendees. We already have a question from Mr. Neeraj Kumar, DGM Fuel Management of NTPC. He says, which coal subsidiary is presently using electric-driven earth moving equipments, and may please share energy requirement kWh MT for coal excavation through electric means. I request any one of the panelists to kindly answer this question. He has one more question. He would like to hear about the reforms being brought in fair and transparent DISCOMs, distribution network, and in smart meters. I would request any of the panelists to kindly take it up. Mr. Shukla, if you would like to answer.
With my little knowledge and background of coal in earlier years, I may say that Coal India, many of the subsidiaries, electrical driven shovels were used, but now more thrust is on hydraulic equipments. So in northern coal fields and in southeastern coal fields, electrical shovels are in use, and in many of the underground mines also, electric-driven equipments are in use. So I feel that we are switching over to hydraulic equipments, heavy earth moving machines, but still some usage is there in these mines. I don't know, comparative cost, comparative efficiency, how it works, but still it is.
Yeah, if I may add to the inputs from Mr. Shukla, I think from a continuous mining perspective, as those technologies get more and more adopted, then we will see a lot more, electrical equipment being used, and especially when we think about steep angle conveyors and technologies like that, then the electricity demand will go up. But right now, it is limited, as Mr. Shukla very rightly highlighted.
Correct.
I think the question has been taken up well, and that solves the purpose. We have one more question. thermal energy that is challenging the ambitious goals of achieving 1 billion production by 2025. How would you see considering environmental commitments, global as well as national, into these ambitious expansion plans? Mr. Bhatia, may I request you to kindly take this up?
Yes, definitely. See, I think it's a very pertinent question. There are definitely strong reasons why renewable technologies are being pushed. But I think from a coal perspective, we talk about emissions from coal, but imagine importing 230 million tons of coal. What are the kind of emissions we are incurring purely in the logistics, to put it on a ship which will carry it, and the inbound logistics of that coal, the emissions from just the logistics are huge. So I think simply by substituting imported coal by domestic coal, net, I would say global emissions will be lower purely by using domestic coal. So that is one point I'd like to put forward. Second, I think with technology, and the answer always lies in technology, we can make coal greener. What do I mean by making coal greener? The entire mining process, the processing of the coal, and also, in the emissions control. So there are many things that can be done. And also at the mine site, there are now significant initiatives, like plantation, land reclamation, and there are excellent examples within Coal India, and also, at NLC, where I have personally seen the kind of wonderful work they have done in, post-mining, the way they have recovered the land and built up the green cover. So I think in the entire mining process, we can definitely make it greener. Then lastly, I think, the biggest advantage of thermal power, coal-based power, is availability. So, your, renewable energy without storage is unreliable and also currently not able to meet base load demand in a stable manner. So from that point of view, and also for ensuring grid stability, I think there are many factors which support, coal-based thermal power.
Thank you, sir.
I would like to add here that Coal India is putting all out effort to create new washeries, new non-coking coal washeries, and that will certainly work out for giving clean coal, because pit head washeries, if created on a modular basis, then it will come in a lower cost also, as well as it will give a better output too. And in earlier years, 2010-11, there was National Clean Energy and Environment Fund, where on polluters pay principle, it was working, and the cess was collected to go for the clean energy initiative. And gradually, I think the coal producers will be aware, because a lot of penalties will be charged, lot of restrictions will be there. So naturally, the green energy will come out, and coal producers will go for sustainable mining too in coming years. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. One of our attendees would also like to know about the reforms being brought in the fair and transparent distribution network, one of them being smart meters. Any other reforms on which you would like to highlight? The question from NTPC. The discoms.
I think smart metering is definitely one part of it, but also smart grids and also microgrids. I think these are things that we continue to see. And also, I think the diversity, again, from a technology perspective, we will see a lot more diversity in the way the grid is organized and managed. A lot more technology to come in, especially when we see renewables with variable input and outputs coming in. So I think on the grid side we will see a lot of innovation to be able to absorb more renewables.
Thank you so much. There is a question regarding is this CTL coal to liquid prospect beneficial for India? Coal liquefaction converts coal into liquid hydrocarbons. So, do you really find it prospective? This CTL process.
Yes, I think a lot of efforts have been made in the past for coal to liquids. I think internationally, if we look at it, South Africa has been doing it very successfully for many years. Over the coming years, I think we will see a lot more of this. And already, if we look at Germany and at our steel mills in Germany, ThyssenKrupp steel mills, we are already starting a process whereby we call it carbon to chem. So we are looking at the CO2 emissions from steel plants and using green energy to convert that into a chemical train. So this also will continue in the days ahead, and we will look at green steel. Even in cement, there is a big push with oxyfuels technology to grow from gray to green cement. So yes, definitely, I think we should not underestimate the impact technology can have. If you look at oil and gas, 20 years ago nobody was talking about shale, and today shale has made US from a net importer to a net exporter. So definitely technology will play a significant role in the coming years in the coal sector in India as well, and also for the users of coal, in carbon capture and making them more green.
Thank you, sir. We will take up this last question since we are running out of time. Though Mr. Bhattacharya has already left the margin meeting, when coal gets stagnant by 2045, how do we justify the railway linkage creation and infrastructure creation for 20 years? This is the last question for the session. Mr. Shukla, just you to kindly...
Please repeat the question.
When coal need would get stagnant 2045, how do we justify the railway linkage creation and infrastructure creation for 20 years? This was suggested by Mr. A.K. Singh. Singh, if you are there, you can also take it up.
That is true, but gradually we'll switch over to other technologies also. I mean, not necessarily that coal will be used as a fuel for the industry. Coal gasification is taking in a big way in our country. And then, as told by Mr. Bhattacharya, that methanol out of coal, that is also coming from some complex of Coal India, Dankuni coal complex. So this way, I feel that the infrastructure should also be created to switch over from coal to other energy sources like gasification, from liquid sources, etc. So this should be kept in mind in creating any infrastructure that in coming years we may not use coal after 2050. So that way we should plan that in the country the infrastructure should also to adopt the change in their energy consumption pattern.
Yeah. I think if I can just add to that, see, the growth will stabilize by 20 years from now. So we will, from 720 million tons, we will reach around 1300 or 1400 million tons. But that production level will continue for some time. So actually the infrastructure will be required to continue to grow and to sustain that production level for another, till 2060 maybe. That is one. Second, I think a lot of the trunk infrastructure, coal mines are, in fairly concentrated in India. So the trunk infrastructure will be common, and the peripheral infrastructure is what we are talking about, which is not as significant, compared to the base trunk load. So that would be my additional comments to what Mr. Shukla said.
Thank you so much, everyone. I think we have answered all the questions. And now I would request Mr. M.C. Thomas, Chairman, ICC Odisha State Council, to formally address us and provide the vote of.
Thank you, Nilanjan. Good afternoon, everyone. This is really a proud privilege for me to propose a vote of thanks in this inaugural session of the 12th India Coal Summit. On behalf of ICC, I would like to thank all of you as we come to the close of this session. It's my pleasure to propose a formal vote of thanks. I would like to express our sincere thanks to Coal India Limited and then in the subject. Also, Mr. A.K. Shukla, Mr. Vivek Bhatia, Managing Director, ThyssenKrupp Group, and Mr. A.K. Singh, Executive Director, RINL, and of course our Chairman, Mr. Brijbhushan Agarwal, ICC National Expert Committee on Minerals and Metals, for the excellent deliberations and the inputs provided to all the delegates. I am sure that this would have given us a lot of insights and a lot of inputs for the future of coal in the country. As you would all agree, the headwinds against coal industry, both domestically and internationally, have been evident for some time. And many speakers today also mentioned about protests and pressures for exiting from coal for developed countries growing faster. As far India is concerned, we have an ambitious plan for renewable energy, but we still have a long way to go with coal, and we need to meet our growth aspirations as a country through the source of coal. So coal will be here to stay for some time, and definitely we have a lot of things to do before the phasing out of coal which can happen. I think the Indian coal industry still faces structural and financial issues and challenges, and not to mention, not to leave behind the current situation of COVID, which has impacted every business, irrespective of which area we are in. Despite Coal India's position of a leading coal sector and being the largest coal company, it still doesn't meet all the growing demand of the country. The government of India has taken an initiative for private sector participation in coal mining by bringing a commercial coal box open for distribution. This has gone through several iterations in the past, with several feedbacks being given by the industry taken into consideration in the current round, which I hope will see some good success. If you look at India's per capita energy consumption, it's only 1/3 of the world's average, which itself shows that we as a country has a long distance to go in terms of building our energy capacities, and as the country moves forward, the requirement for energy will only increase. And India has been credited for making some good commitments on renewable energy targets, and we are on track to meet the nationally determined contribution under the Paris Agreement, which is a very important thing, because sustainability, as we all agree, is very, very important for us and our future generation. I think there is a place for coal mining to continue for some more time, and we keep working on the green energy and the renewable percentage in the country going forward, so that we still have a sustainable tomorrow. Once again, my sincere thanks to all the sponsors who have supported this event to make it a great success. On behalf of ICC, I would like to specially thank the sponsors: WBSCDCL, JSW, TAKRAF, Tenova, MOIL, NMDC, Rashmi Group, and KCT for their significant contribution in making this happen. I also thank all the panelists once again for their time and the contribution, and all the delegates for signing in for this program. Thank you.
Thank you so